What's going on, guys? Andrew of New Bar Gaming back here, and today we're going to be talking about some Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains episode 80. Now, within the first couple minutes of this episode, we see Go back within that essentially giant, machine, mechanized tank that we see him dueling within every time he's within, Vrains. I'm assuming this helps to, establish the bond between him and his AI, but what we quickly find out within this episode is all that data they mined off of the Earth Ignis has now been implanted into Go. Now, this is an especially interesting detail to me because it makes me wonder, how powerful is the influence the AI has over Go, right? Go keeps repeating within the duel that he's the one in control. But at the same time, we've seen other situations within Yu-Gi-Oh! Where we have this kind of two characters within the same body type of a situation, where one seems in control but the other's able to overcome them from time to time. Let's talk about Yami Merrick and regular Merrick in the Battle City arc of Duelist Kingdom. I'm sorry, not Duelist Kingdom, Duel Monsters. It's because regular Merrick's able to gain some control over his body that Yami Yugi ends up being able to win that duel. Or even when Yugi's dueling against Joey, Joey's able to overcome some of Merrick's control as well. Now, obviously, this isn't a magic-based item. It is more technology based, so I don't know if that same openness for, just willpower being able to come through is the case here, but perhaps Earth is going to be able to sway Go to stop this little vendetta of his and come back to the good side. We even saw in the episode preview at the end of this one that it's willpower that determines the victory and, deciding that you want to win. Well, even though it's Playmaker saying that, the episode endings before have managed to deceive us. For instance, right before the episode where it was revealed that Aqua and Aoi were going to work together, they kept talking about how all she needed was a kind heart to speak to her, right? And they were showing images of Revolver on the screen. Well, Revolver and Aoi never interacted within that episode, so it's quite possible we're going to see something like Earth managing to overcome Go here. Maybe he pins Yusaku against a wall, in much a similar way that Yugi was pinned pretty well against Joey when Merrick was controlling him. Then Joey manages to overcome it, and then Yugi's able to turn the tables, they win the duel, right? Maybe Earth does the same thing. He's managed to take control for a second, lets Yusaku win because he understands if Go keeps winning, he's essentially putting Aqua at risk. We've seen within Yu-Gi-Oh! Friendship is often a theme that is used to convey the most powerful thing, right? Well, Earth is really strong friends with Aqua, maybe that's going to be what overcomes it. Go, I would also like to think, on some level, had some degree of friendship with Playmaker, even if that has become shrouded in this vendetta. Maybe Playmaker's going to be able to reignite that within him. We also see a lot of fans watching from on to Link Vrains when they see that Playmaker and Go and Izuka are dueling. Perhaps they'll be able to get through to Go as well. Go really seemed to pride himself on his ability to inspire the kids from the orphanage, be able to inspire his fans, and basically just make dueling into this fun environment for everybody. So maybe if he's reminded of that, he'll be able to snap out of the situation that he's currently in. We're just gonna have to wait and see how that unfolds, but it's certainly following some themes we've seen before. Now, as for some neat details about this little glimpse we get into the machine that Go's got going on here, he also talks about how he's established every formula for winning. Now, he seems to be talking about this broadly, but at the same time, during this scene, we also see flashes of cards passing his eye, and there may have been some generic cards thrown in there, but at least the few I was able to identify within that quick flash were cards that belonged in Playmaker's deck. I'm pretty sure I saw Firewall Dragon, Link Slayer, those types of cards. Things that are relatively iconic for Yusaku to be using. And who is it that Go has a main vendetta against? Well, it's Playmaker. Playmaker and Yusaku being the same person, right? So with that being the case, part of me wonders if he's literally, when he's saying that line about studying every formula to win, maybe he's studied every combination based around the known cards in Playmaker's deck to be prepared for it. Now, I don't know that for sure, of course, but it seems like it could almost be implying in that direction, especially as obsessive as Go has seemed to be about beating Yusaku. And he just seems overall obsessed with winning as well at the same time, so perhaps he is just talking about generic formulas. Once more, just a minor detail that maybe the writers left up to interpretation on purpose. Now, while we're on the topic of Go's obsession with beating Playmaker, Revolver makes a really neat comment here. He talks about how tenacity has the ability to bring people to new heights. It essentially can force you to get better than you currently are at things, but it can also quickly turn into a negative thing, which is essentially what he's referencing in terms of Go Onizuka's obsession. Another time where this show, at least consistently here, has been kind of hitting on the head with some philosophical identifications about human nature. A lot of us have a tendency to think, okay, I'm losing, so I'm going to dig my heels in and essentially fight back. I'm going to push forward until I succeed at what's going on. And that type of hard work mentality is always a good thing, or is generally a good thing, I should say, not always. A lot of times it pushes us to become better versions of ourselves. Let's say you're struggling in like a class in school, right? And you're having a lot of difficulty grasping a concept. Well, if you keep studying at it, going through practice problems, asking for help where needed, looking up YouTube videos on how to rework it, learning those problems inside and out so that your greatest weakness turns into your greatest strength, that's a really good way to build character, build yourself as a whole. That's an example of hard work being a good thing. But there's also such a thing as obsession. And these obsessions a lot of times are what can lead to the darkest parts of humanity. You know, you see something like Go, who goes from a generally friendly guy who cares about inspiring these kids at the orphanage that don't have a lot to cling to, who cares about reminding people of how fun dueling is, how much potential something like Vrains is, and just about giving a good show to the audience, right? He's a genuinely good guy. He turns into this dark, brooding figure with an AI infused to him who cares about nothing other than winning. And then looking to some real life examples, a lot of times it's those very obsessions that can lead to things like murder and thievery, and just a lot of the darker sides of humanity can show themselves through that as well. And I think Revolver makes a very optimal point there. Another example of when Yu-Gi-Oh goes a little bit vague with these nature things without getting like too preachy and over specific about it, it can add a lot to the show in terms of depth, at least in my opinion. And while we're on the topic of that, Go's obsession in essence is about revenge, which can take, once more, somebody who's good and turn them into a very dangerous figure, to the point where he's actually scaring Playmaker. Now, Playmaker, being the kind of edgy, keep-to-himself main protagonist that we have, won't directly admit to being afraid, but Go even comments on it, and Yusaku won't comment back, and even I ends up admitting, yeah, I am a little bit afraid of you, because he's a character they thought they knew, they understood, and now they're seeing behavior that's way outside of what they expect from him. And what do humans often fear most? The things that they don't understand. Well, Go went from being this guy that they got along with, that they found to be an ally, a friend, and now he's suddenly at the complete opposite side. I certainly wouldn't understand that fully myself. I understand he wants to get back to winning, but understanding exactly what's going on in his mind, what his motives are, and how they may be able to work with him, not to mention they're on the other side of his blade if he was a swordsman, if to use a little bit of an analogy there, it would be something that is a little bit intimidating. That's why we see Playmaker essentially going all in on his first turn. He's trying to beat Go within a single round, which frustrates Go even a little bit, because his comment is, well, I went through all of this just to beat you, and you're making these careless plays, you're not doing anything unpredictable. Essentially, you're just showing up and doing what you have to do in order to try and beat me quickly. You're not thinking what you're doing through. After I put in all of this work, you're not even going to push me to evolve further, which, once more, shows this kind of brooding confidence. And I think we might see Playmaker start to sweat a little bit. Now, while we're talking about him sweating a little bit, normally when Playmaker's in a speed duel and he gets backed into a corner, what does he do? He uses Storm Access to bail himself out, right? And then I had recently introduced him into that sort of Neo Storm Access type of thing with his duel against Bowman, where he was able to get through to another card, like a more powerful version of a card. Well, it shows him doing this in the episode preview for the next episode, at least something that looks extremely similar to it. He's got his hand within a data storm and such. But we're also well aware that Go Onizuka normally uses anti-skill in order to block duelists from using their skill. So part of me wonders if maybe he took on the skill that Earth typically used. Now that they are infused with each other, he's already using Earth's cards, so I wouldn't say that's out of the picture at all. Or perhaps we might even see Go use Storm Access or something along those lines. I think those are quite possible, considering his thing he seems to constantly be about evolving. Heck, that's kind of the theme of what's going on within the show as a whole right now. Yusaku's party sort of represents learning from one another, working together, and those types of things. I mean, after all, most of his allies are paired with an AI, and they work together to find their victories. Then you have Lightning's faction, which is essentially based on conquering and then stealing ideas, right? So his idea is to conquer humanity and then take what's best from them. And then you have Go sort of representing Soul Technologies, which is to infuse the two into one rather than necessarily using direct cooperation. It's sort of like forcing one to obey the other, almost enslaving, if you will, is what they seek to do to the AIs. At least that's what I'm picking up based on the idea that Go keeps emphasizing, I'm in control, I'm the one commanding Earth while it's within my body. So kind of these three different philosophical ideals that are all based around the idea of evolving your skills, learning new things. And Go's approach would suggest that he is continuing to try to learn at least, and perhaps he would have stolen more of Earth's skills than just his card, his skill, or maybe just something like Storm Access. Once more, he does seem to be obsessively studying what Playmaker does. We do know that you don't necessarily need an AI to use Storm Access. We saw Revolver do that, although Revolver still seems to have a little bit of an unexplained tie to Link Vrains, though perhaps it does derive from his hacking ability. Regardless, it's going to be interesting to see how Playmaker manages to use Storm Access himself. I'm putting most of my cards in that Go is not using anti-skill here. He's using a different skill entirely. That way Yusaku still has that available to him. So given the fact that it does seem like Yusaku is going to be backed into a corner here, he's already struggling a little bit against Go, that brings up the idea of Yusaku's got to bail himself out somehow. Well, first thought that comes to mind for me is I know Konami has confirmed that they're printing some kind of a Firewall Dragon XZ monster, so I think it's possible that Yusaku's going to end up XZ summoning here. We've seen Synchro Summoning and Fusion Summoning really starting to become commonplace amongst our main cast in this show, so to see Yusaku manage to stay ahead of the curve with XZ summoning would definitely make a lot of sense. That way he continues to kind of be the strongest duelist within the show. A lot of times Yu-Gi-Oh! Likes to hype up their main character as doing that. I think it's also possible he's just going to pull kind of a standard spell or something that's very situational out to bail him out. We'll have to wait and see how it happens. I'll also be curious to see if Go implements more of Earth's tactics. Once more, they're kind of coexisting within each other right now. Now that we're kind of wrapped up with the whole Go versus Playmaker thing, a weird little detail I noticed about this episode is when we have Aoi and Soulburner jump down to start watching the duel from atop a building, their D-boards, they just hop off of them while they're still moving. So it's kind of implied that as the D-boards are cut away from the camera, they're just still moving randomly throughout Link Vrains. Kind of just a weird detail to me because we don't really know where those may go, and I'm kind of curious as to how they keep track of them. Perhaps they kind of have a button to summon them or something like that, or just a new one spawns when they need it. It could be something that I've missed in previous episodes, but I just thought that was a little weird how they could completely abandon them rather than just kind of landing them next to them or something along those lines. And the last little detail I want to touch upon within this episode, guys, is just how vicious of a character Queen is and how much she's really starting to get under the skin of Akira. Those two have a brief conversation here where she's basically explaining, hey, I know you're cautious about Go, but forget about that. We're going to keep sending him into the field. We don't have Blood Shepherd anymore. I need to keep collecting data. We implanted him with the Earth Ignis, and we just got to wait and see what happens with that. We're just going to keep going, gathering my information. I'm a business. I've got to get that info as quick as possible to keep cranking out new products. And Akira's actually starting to try and defend Go here. Defend not just Go, but his ideals. He's talking about how, hey, you've already gathered enough information from mining that Earth Ignis. Why do you need to keep doing this? It's more talk back than we've seen from Akira in the previous episodes, and he's starting to express a little bit about that anger that's contained within him and his frustration with how morally, basically horrible Soul Technologies is being about everything. And before, he hasn't really directly expressed that to the Queen, so I think we are pushing Akira further and further towards that whole idea of rebelling against Soul Technologies outright. I'm really hoping we're going to see that at some point here. I would like to see Akira duel again. Perhaps he makes a sacrifice play to save Aoi or something like that. I think he's a neat character. I would love to see some more action out of him. And I think they're also spelling out more and more for us in front of our faces that Soul Technologies is going to turn into one of the main antagonists. Perhaps they're going to still be using Go Onizuka at that point when we do get to them being the main antagonists. I do think in some way, shape, or form, Go or not, they're going to be using this whole human AI hybrid thing, and then Playmaker and the others need to shut it down. Perhaps it even ends up turning against them in sort of like an iRobot type of fashion. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. But as per usual, guys, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Be sure to let me know all of your thoughts, any questions, theories, ideas you have in the comment section as well. If not, constructive criticism is always welcome, and I'll catch you guys next time with some more Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains content.